He taught high school initially at Granite High School in chemistry and mathematics and physics and whatever. He's held marketing and public relations and engineering positions at 3M, or 3Com Corporation's Mobile Communications Division, Evans and Sutherland Computer Corporation, and Hercules Aerospace Company. Prior to joining EDC Utah, Jeff was the vice president of marketing for Consonus, which is a web hosting and network engineering firm and a spin-off of Questar Corporation. He also has served as director of marketing for Western Governors University. Jeff was appointed president and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation of Utah in January of 2005, having served since 2001 as vice president of client services. Jeff will tell us about all about EDC Utah, how it works closely with Utah Governor's Office and other entities to target recruiting in energy, biotech, aerospace, outdoor products, information technology, and financial services. Over the past 4 years, he has assisted companies to create more than 26,000 new jobs in Utah, retain over 8,000 jobs, and invest more than $3 billion in capital in Utah. He was named the CEO of the Year for Nonprofit Companies by Utah Business Magazine in May of 2008, and is named 100 among the 100 most influential people by Utah Magazine in January of 2011. Now, I became first acquainted with Jeff when he was the director of a church-sponsored production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. He was the director, and I was amazed at his ability to be calm and rational in the midst of a certain amount of chaos. The production was a roaring success, in no small part because of his leadership. And I consider Jeff a dear and valuable friend. So we're honored to have him here today to speak to us. He and his wife, Carolina Evans Edwards, are the proud parents of 4 children, 2 grandchildren, and 1 dog. So we are honored to have him speak to us, fellow Rotarians. I present Jeff Edwards.
Well, it's a real honor to be here. It's especially a great honor to be here with some of my fellow colleagues in economic development. You can always find Lou Kramer in the crowd because he has the radiantness of Mr. Kramer. He and I shared responsibility for when he was the director of the World Trade Center in Utah. We worked together very much. And then I see Dave Winder in the audience. Many of you may remember Dave's assignment in the Department of Community and Economic Development. He was the director there for many years. And I started my career in economic development when Dave was there and led us through the Olympics and all the amazing things that happened through all that. So David, it's good to have you here. And then some good friends and neighbors here. Roger, you should know about Roger. Roger's part in this infamous production of Joseph was as a musician. You may not know this, but Roger plays both the clarinet and the saxophone, although not at the same time, apparently. He hasn't quite mastered that yet, but among his many skills, that's one. But I count him as a good friend and neighbor. And Skip Daines is a neighbor of mine as well, who is the only man I know that has sold more Steinway pianos than any other person in the United States, but does not play the piano. So anyway, it's great to be with you today. I share a couple of thoughts with you about Brussels. Lou and I were just there a few months ago with the governor, and in fact, the place where we had most of our meetings was right in downtown Brussels, not far from where the bombing in the metro station happened. I've been in and out of the Brussels airport many times, and in fact, I was in Paris just 2 weeks ago. And so, Lou, I wore my pin today in solidarity with both France and Belgium. It just breaks my heart to see a city of that magnitude and the people that are so proud and so worthy of that pride, the industrious and amazing people of Belgium, to be now under the crosshairs of this incredibly evil and really onerous organization. I was in walking the streets of Paris 2 weeks ago. I felt like I was very safe, felt like Paris was trying its best to be itself. But in the shadows and every place you would go on the train stations, there are military traveling in threes with automatic weapons, and they're there. If you look for them, you can find them. The security is there. And as I was walking around, I felt safe and didn't feel like there was an issue there. But of course, with Europe, as are we, very vulnerable to this kind of disruption. And I only hope that we can bring it to a conclusion in some way or another. So, my purpose today is to talk a little bit about economic development in the state. I'm going to have a few remarks to get us started. I brought along a video that I'd like to show you in just a minute, but we'll get to that in just a second. Some of you in this audience may remember when EDC Utah was created more than 30 years ago. It was created in 1987 by what was called the Committee of 100, which were 100 business leaders actually from the Salt Lake Chamber when it first began. Rich probably remembers back in those days. But it has since evolved into being a place for a non-profit, a non-government organization that can be a real catalyst for creating new jobs in the state without being part of government. And that was the idea. So we're set up as a non-profit corporation. We're funded by a mix of funds from local governments, so cities and counties all around the state, both large and small, as well as private sector organizations. Many of you in this room are part of organizations that support us financially. And then in 2005, when Governor Huntsman was elected, we made a wonderful partnership with the state of Utah, and today have an outstanding relationship with the Governor's Office of Economic Development. Some of you may know Val Hale, who's the executive director of that office right now. EDC Utah and GoEd are working together, and our mission is to be the business development side of the operation. So when companies are interested in looking in Utah, we have the assignment to receive them, to give them all the information they need, to help them host a visit here in the city or in the state. And then we work with GoEd. The GoEd team runs the State Center program, the cluster development thing. We also work with the World Trade Center, who is in charge of trying to help Utah companies with exports, as well as doing foreign direct investment in our community. So we have some excellent partners in this endeavor. And as Roger said, we've been so fortunate as a state to see the kind of job growth that we've had here for the last, almost the last decade. If you look, as the numbers would say, we've had over 25,000 new jobs in the last 3 years that are attributable to ours and GoEd's efforts working together. Just this year so far, so our fiscal year starts on July 1. From July 1 to now, there have been almost 11,000 new jobs added, and on top of that, 25,000. Capital investment is at almost $1 billion, and that also includes some jobs that are retained. So we're on every list you could imagine, and it's so interesting. When I started economic development in 2001, in that year we had a total, and Dave would remember this, we had a total of 12 site visits in that year. And we kind of sat by the phone, and there were cobwebs growing on the phone at that time. We were kind of waiting for the phone to ring, and the games went forward in 2002, and we might all remember, it's easy to forget that the Olympic Games in Salt Lake City happened only 6 months after 9/11. And I think everybody in this room can remember what a terrible time that was, and all the uncertainty that was out there. Remember, travel had stopped, the ticket sales were going nowhere, and finally President Bush came forward and said, the U.S. military will take care of security. And once that was there, the Olympic Committee and everybody could realize we're okay, it's going to happen. And in the months after that, it started coming back, and by November and December, ticket sales were off the charts, and we knew we were in store for what turned out to be an amazingly successful games. I look back on the Olympic Games as being the turning point. That was the inflection point when we got onto the national and the international radar, and we can look back and see that was the time when it all changed. About a month after the games were over, my former boss, Chris Roybal, and I went to New York City. We had a meeting with KPMG with a bunch of site consultants. We walked into this crowded conference room, and as we walked in, we got a standing ovation. And they said to us, we are so proud of you as fellow Americans for how you represented us as a country and how you helped us recover from this great loss that we had. And I know everybody that was in the games felt that same way. There was that spirit that was just remarkable. And I think that has persisted, and even now, 15 years later, we are still harvesting that image and that goodwill and all the things that go with that. So, all right, so I'm going to turn the tables on you, and I'm going to deputize each one of you now to be economic development folks. And I want you to give me some, what would you say to someone that you were trying to convince to come to Utah about why they should come? Let's just have some hands. What do you think? Give me some ideas.
Great people.
Great people. Okay, there's a good one. What do you think?
Good volunteers.
Volunteers. Okay.
Cost of doing business.
Cost of doing business. Right.
Cultural center of the West.
Cultural center of the West. We beat out Wyoming in that case. That's good. Mr. Mayor.
Great setting here in the Intermountain West.
So the physical setting environment, this is what Denver wishes it looked like, right? Okay. What do you think?
Delta Hub.
The Delta Hub. Okay, good one. All right.
Maybe some of our infrastructure is a little pockmarked right now with all the snow, but we have great infrastructure.
Infrastructure. Okay, easy to get around, in and out. Okay. Those are all great ideas, and I want you to think about it in a minute. But I brought the #1 person who knows the most about our state and who calls himself the CBO of the state. He's known as the Chief Bragging Officer of the state. And I think you'll recognize him. So I brought him on video, so we'll just have to capture his experience. So hopefully this will work here just in a second. Hello. I'm Gary Herbert. Okay, here we go.
Did you know that Utah's been ranked #1 for economic outlook every year since 2008? And everyone, from the Washington Post to Fortune magazine to the New Yorker magazine, has been talking about Utah, trying to discover our secret to success. So, what is our secret?
The secret is to get the iPad to work.
Well, I can tell you, but I think I'll let some fellow Utahns fill you in.
Why is Utah so great? Well, did you know that Utah's unemployment rate is one of the lowest in the nation at 3.4%?
And Utah has an annual projected job growth rate of 2.8% through 2020. That's more than double the national average.
And driving all that job growth is Utah's status as one of the nation's most enterprising states.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce recently ranked Utah as the only state in this nation in the top 6 in performance, exports, business climate, talent pipeline, infrastructure, innovation, and entrepreneurship.
That's one of the main reasons Google Fiber chose 2 Utah cities for our super fast internet network, further boosting Utah's status as one of the nation's most connected states.
Speaking of connections, the Brookings Institution ranks Salt Lake City's public transportation system the very best in connecting people to their jobs.
Utah is often called the crossroads of the West. 2 major interstates run through the state, and all major western cities are just a one-day drive away.
And it's not just about roads. Utah boasts a dynamic rail system directly linking Utah to western seaports, including Oakland, Seattle, Portland, and Los Angeles.
And don't forget Salt Lake City International Airport. We rank #1 in domestic on-time departures in North America, and we currently serve as Delta Airlines' westernmost United States domestic hub. We are currently undergoing a major redevelopment to become even more efficient and convenient.
And it's not just our airport that's expanding. Salt Lake City and the surrounding area are experiencing unprecedented corporate office development to meet the amazing job growth.
Utah is building an economic dynasty. In fact, Forbes magazine has named Utah the #1 state for business and careers 5 out of the last 6 years.
Another thing making Utah so attractive to corporations is our low utility rates. Did you know that Utah's electricity, natural gas, and other utility rates are some of the lowest in the nation?
Energy is a $5.3 billion industry in Utah, and we export over 30% of all the energy we produce.
Utah is one of the world's leaders in the mining and production of copper, coal, gold, silver, uranium, iron, lead, zinc, molybdenum, phosphate, salt, potash, beryllium, and gilsonite.
If you ask me, Utah's biggest treasure is the greatest snow on earth. Utah has 14 world-class ski resorts, and 11 of those resorts are within a 1-hour drive of Salt Lake City International Airport. Beat that, Denver.
And don't forget about the food. Zagat's recently named Salt Lake City one of the nation's best up-and-coming food cities.
And after you eat, why not take in a performance by well-renowned artists from the Utah Symphony, Utah Opera, Ballet West, or Pioneer Theater?
Utah's music scene is exploding. There are shows every night from established and up-and-coming artists. And many more world-famous artists are proud to call Utah home.
And when the show is over, Utah's nightlife is just beginning. Utah is home to thousands of world-class bars, pubs, and clubs.
Or you could venture further south to Cedar City and experience the Tony Award-winning Utah Shakespeare Festival.
And you've got to experience our mighty 5 national parks, Zion, Bryce, Canyonlands, Arches, and Capitol Reef, plus 43 state parks. There'd be national parks in any other state, but Mother Nature played favorites in Utah.
If you enjoy hiking or biking, fishing or photography, there's nowhere better than Utah. That's probably one of the reasons Utahns are so healthy.
Utah is ranked as the 5th healthiest state in the nation, and Utahns pay the least of any state for healthcare.
In fact, Utah was one of the first states to offer their own health insurance exchange, Avenue H.
And Utah is the lowest in the nation in cancer deaths, thanks in part to the groundbreaking cancer research and treatment available at Huntsman Cancer Institute and other Utah hospitals.
Utah's become a biotech hotbed thanks to BioFire and Myriad and many others, not to mention our excellent research universities.
Since 2006, the University of Utah has ranked among the top universities in the country for research-based startup companies powered by faculty-developed technologies.
And it's not just research that fuels those startups. It's our spirit of entrepreneurship. Salt Lake City was recently named the #1 hot startup city outside of New York and San Francisco.
And from the VC sector in Utah, we're focused on quality over quantity. In 2014, Utah ranked in the top 3 nationally for dollar per deal average.
And all those high-tech startups and established companies require a highly educated workforce. Education in Utah focuses particularly on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math education, which present the greatest opportunities for growth and employment in the years to come.
Utah's known for more than science and technology careers. Salt Lake City was recently ranked by the Huffington Post as the 2nd best city in the nation for creative career seekers.
Creativity is showcased in full force at the annual Sundance Film Festival. The festival and its programs attract thousands of the world's most creative writers, directors, and filmmakers to Utah.
Without Utah's spirit of volunteerism, we'd never be able to be home to the Sundance Film Festival or the 2002 Winter Olympics. Utahns love their community and work hard to make it better. Utahns boast the highest number of volunteer hours of any state in the nation.
Utah also has the most youthful population in the nation, which spurs the state's active lifestyle and vibrant workforce. Just look at me. I'm the lieutenant governor, and I'm only...
We don't need to hear how young you are, Spencer, but in all seriousness, Utah is truly an amazing place to live, work, and play, and it's becoming better every single day.
So, did we give away our secret? Low tax rates, an energetic workforce, innovative solutions to challenges, sensible regulations, and an incredible lifestyle. All of that is an important part of Utah's success. But what's the real secret ingredient that's created one of the best economic environments in the nation? It's the people of Utah. People thrive here, and you could too. We invite you to become part of Utah's continued success. Thank you.
There you go. I'll share this link with you guys if you'd ever like. You can download this. This is free. GoEd produces this. It's one of the best ones they've done. I think it's the best one yet. It's really great. It's sold. We're here. So if you have colleagues and friends that want to know what's going on in the state, love to have you share this message that's heading out there. Let me just briefly mention a couple of the companies that have come to here. And one of the best parts of my job is I get to work with these folks one-on-one. OCL, Over Ocean Container Line, Hong Kong-based company, headquarters in San Francisco, decided they were done with California and moved up, and now have an office of over 100 in South Jordan, Utah, right in the River Park. And one of the reasons they chose here, they could find MBAs that spoke Chinese. Okay, an amazing demographic that we have in Utah. Boeing, Boeing has almost 1,000 people working in Utah now, building the carbon fiber composite components for the 787 Dreamliner. Viricon, architectural glass company, hit in St. George, got hit really hard in the recession, bounced back, reopened their plant in St. George. Now they've got almost 400 people working for them in St. George. You know the Adobe building down in Lehigh, over 1,200 people. They're full. They're at capacity. They've got 1,200 people working for Adobe down in Lehigh that came from Josh James, his little startup called On Mature that then turned into now a branch of Adobe. I could go on. One of my very favorite projects is Procter & Gamble. They came to us through a site consultant almost 8 years now, looking for a rural site. We competed with Oregon, Washington, and Utah, where they looked in 21 states, narrowed it down to 3. They came to us. We worked with them with Box Elder County. They found a site. The site they eventually chose. Who here knows where Bear River City is? Okay, There we go. Bear River City Gateway to Corinne, right? And, or Tremont, whichever one you prefer. So they chose a site in Bear River City. They ended up choosing that. They wanted to buy some land. So the chief, the business unit from Procter & Gamble was a guy from Brazil. And think about P&G as this global company. He wanted to come and see the land and talk to the people that are buying the land. So he comes to town, wants to kind of be under the radar, but he brings his whole entourage with him. We take 2 suburban loads of black Suburbans across the dusty trails of Box Elder County to meet the farmer who was going to sell the land, who was harvesting at that time and couldn't get off the land because he was harvesting. So he's on his tractor. We drive out in the middle of the field. The guy gets off his tractor, dusts himself off, recites a piece of cowboy poetry. The guy from Brazil has a smile on his face like this. They talk for a few minutes. They shake hands. They do the deal right there in the field, and we drive away. No lawyers, no contracts. And on the way to the airport, the guy turns and he says, "We can do business here. These are our kind of people. This is what we want to have happen." And this has happened over and over and over again. And it is the people of our state that make it such a wonderful thing. So anyway, I could talk for hours about all the projects that we work on. I'd like to save some time for questions. So if you've got questions on anything related to this, please ask, and we'll go for as long as we can on that. So yes, sir.
Tell us about Goldman Sachs presidency.
The question was about Goldman. Goldman started here in 2000 with about 100 people that they brought up to create a wealth management unit in the middle of the dot-com frenzy. As we all know, the dot-com crash, I personally know about the dot-bomb side to that, did that twice. They moved them all here from Manhattan. Everybody said they were crazy. You're never gonna get 100 Manhattanites to stay in Utah for more than about 15 minutes. And they ended up staying. About 80% of them stayed. And now, today, they've got 2,500 people in Utah. They have the site still up at the university. They have the site on 222 South Main. They're getting ready to move over to 111 South Main with Mr. Kramer and his crowd. And by the time they're done, they'll be at 2,500. This is the #1 most requested destination outside of New York. Outside of anywhere in the company, this is their #1. And it's now the 2nd largest in the United States. So it's pretty amazing. And they use language skills. Language is a big part of it. So, yeah.
Things are going well. What concerns you?
You all know what the unemployment rate looks like right now. Last week it was 3.5%, about there, around somewhere in there. In some parts of the state, it's probably lower than that. In Cache Valley, it's probably closer to 2.5%. Very tough to find people in Cache Valley right now. So my biggest worry is, where are we going to get the workers for all the opportunities that are on our plate? We have so many things that are in front of us right now that are out there. So where are we going to do that? And so the answer to that is, and the governor was right on this year to insist on putting a lot of major investments in education. We've got to not only have the quantity, but also the quality of workers to make that all really work. We need to figure out ways to get people that are on the margins of the workforce right now, maybe people that have been working, that left to raise a family and want to come back, but they don't have the job skills that they need to work today. There's got to be ways to help those folks come back into the marketplace and do some better things too. So, yes, sir.
We have this permanent community impact fund. We're going to send $53 million to Long Beach to build a deep water port. Why don't we keep that here to do exactly what you just said? Train our people and get it reallocated.
The question was about the legislation to build a coal exporting port in California. I shouldn't even comment on that. I think there's much better ways to use $53 million than that. I also have to say, the motivation behind that was trying to figure out how rural economies can remake themselves. And if you live in Carbon County, of course, you're trying to figure that out. So we as a state have to figure out how do we, back to that workforce training question, what can you do to help folks that are being moved out of the economy to come back? And there's talent out there. There's people out there that have got a lot to contribute. And if we can figure out ways to do it, there's other models in other states, the ways that this has been done. I don't want to get political on you, but I will just for a second. One of the candidates running for president, John, the former governor of Ohio, has a model to do that. And he's done it. He did it in Ohio in a very difficult, challenging union environment, brought back almost 100,000 jobs that came back to the state. So there are ways to do that. There are plenty of ways. So I don't need to do that. So, yes, ma'am.
I know originally, or a few years ago, you targeted, wasn't it 7 different areas?
Right.
And I was wondering, how successful has it been to target them, and are you revising those targets?
So the question was about whether we're proactive or whether we're reactive. The answer is we're both. We've got, the good news for us is that every time a new ranking comes out, phone rings. We get somebody saying, what the heck is Utah doing in this space? So we have a lot of activity in that space. But the flip side of that is how do we go out and who would we go after to target? And we've done, between EDCO and GOA, we've done some really good thinking about who should be those target companies. And we've stuck to those clusters. The ones that we're the most active in are in aerospace right now, life sciences, and also in the financial services industry. Those are the three places that we're probably the most active right now. So we try to pick targets carefully. We go to the major markets, so to Southern California, Northern California, Chicago, we're going to be in New York in 2 weeks. We try to go there. And then we also do that on a global scale. The reason I was in Paris was to go to a composite materials trade show. That's a little niche part of the aerospace business where Utah has some tremendous expertise. And so there's some places like that where we can have some real home runs, I think. So, yes, ma'am.
Where do you see the residential real estate market going in the next couple of years?
Spoken like a broker. One of my concerns is as the demand for workers goes up and we start importing more people from outside, in my experience, prices are already on the rise in a big way, especially in Salt Lake County. And I'm concerned that we're not going to have the housing stock to support that. Or it's going to become so expensive that we can't bring in the people that we need to bring in. So I'm really concerned about that. So, yes, sir, Mr. Binion.
To what extent can we grow without degrading the environment?
Well, there's a term called smart growth. One of the organizations that I'm very closely associated with, both personally and professionally, is with Envision Utah. I think they've done a great job at looking at the whole question about saying, how can we, if we are going to grow, how do we do it in an intelligent way that preserves resources, that preserves this quality of life that we all want to have? And I think there are some intelligent ways to do that. So, for example, rather than necessarily building more freeways, what about the idea of putting employment centers out away from the core so that people don't have to travel and commute into Salt Lake or Provo or Ogden, and we can create jobs in other places than along the main corridors? Another thought right now that's on the minds of many is as the prison relocates from Draper to the northwest part of Salt Lake City, what's the highest and best use of that land in Draper? What's the right? There's 700 acres that belong to the state, but there's probably 20,000 acres around there that could be developed. But how do we do that in a smart way to create jobs and use it as an economic engine rather than covering with a bunch of houses or something like that? So I think there's some key things that are out there, and a lot of the communities have signed up for Envision Utah and are really embracing it. So, yes, sir.
So Jeff, I'd like to hear your opinion as somebody else is on pollution. And very specific, for example, I can't imagine we still burn wood in this valley. So very specific things. What is your opinion on pollution? I
believe that air quality is an economic development issue. It's a health issue and lots of other things. But unless we get our arms around dealing with air quality, our phone's going to stop ringing. We're going to not have that ability to attract companies anymore. Unfortunately, air quality is a very complex problem. There's no one silver bullet that fixes that issue. Wood burning is one of those. Another one that's even more significant is automobiles. So 60% of the air pollution in this valley comes from cars, trucks, and buses. If we change the way, if we either decide not to drive, or if we can drive cars that have lower emissions, that's a big deal. So electric vehicles, I'll throw in one pitch. If you can, if on a red air day, drive your newest car, because the new cars today, a 2016 model automobile has an order of magnitude lower air pollution than even just a car that's 5 years older than that. It makes such a difference. And another thing that the governor's been working really hard on is to try to convince the refinery operations here in the state to produce low sulfur gasoline. If you do that, then catalytic converters work better, both for old and for new cars, and that probably is the thing you're doing. That'd be one single thing you could do that's different. But wood burning is turned into a political issue, unfortunately. The last session, the legislature wouldn't even touch it this year. We tried to advocate for that, and they wouldn't go for it. But we've got to take that problem on. We've got to deal with transit. Another one that I heard that was interesting in the legislative session was revising the building codes to convince new home builders to do 2x6 wall construction instead of 2x4. In other words, to increase the energy efficiency of homes. If homes are more energy efficient, they burn less natural gas, which means less air pollution to go with that. Unfortunately, the home builders resisted that, but I heard this morning that Ivory Homes is going to voluntarily go ahead with that, and all their new homes will be more energy efficient going forward. So there are some rays of hope. I think there's some things that are out there, but it's going to take everybody working on this. It's not just industry. It's all of us. We've got to make the right kind of choices. So, last question, and then If anybody wants to stay after, I'm happy to stay and answer some more questions. So, yes.
What can we in the community do to help you help Utah?
That's a great question. I think, and I would ask Mr. Kramer to answer this question as well, because I know he has some strong feelings about this. But the air quality question is one that we all have a role in, whether we're business owners or citizens where we live. Supporting education, that's a problem that we've got to get our arms around, and that's unfortunately in our state it's turned into a political question. But another one, and on the eve of, as Mr. Dahlquist said, tonight with the mass meetings in our parties, I hope we can find people and leaders of goodwill and people that are willing to find solutions and not get backed into the corners that we get backed into. I think those are the folks that come to the table that help find real solutions to problems instead of other ways. So those are the ways, and you're officially all deputized as economic developers to go out and talk about that. Lou, anything you'd like to add?
Well, we're sure grateful to have you, Jeff. You're just a terrific ambassador, and I just want to thank you one more time.
Jeff, thank you so much for adding a positive point to our day. We very much appreciate having you here and hope you'll join us again and perhaps consider joining our ranks.